This story happened in October of 2013. I have 3 stepbrothers who I'll refer to as John, Davis, and Hector. We used to live with my stepmother and my father. We are all from Puerto Rico. We used to attend a secondary school on the outskirts of Paris, France. For context, my stepbrothers and I got along very well and are very close. But at the time, we were somewhat rebellious. We hated the French schools. We were forced to be there because of my dad's job. Despite that, we all spoke French very well, but we had trouble fitting in with the other students since we were seen as outsiders. Our parents worked a lot and didn't pay much attention to us. We would often skip school together and go out and wander around or stay inside. The school would call our parents to let them know that we had skipped class and were slacking when it came to our assignments. Our parents would try to address it, but we gave 0 shits. Sometimes both of our parents would go away on business trips, and we would go out at night. Overall, we were 4 misbehaved bastards. One night at around 1 a.m. on a Thursday, our parents were out of town. My stepbrothers and I were alone in the house. We got bored, so we decided to go out and wander around. Eventually, we came across a restricted area where a bunch of decommissioned train cars sat. Oh wow, look at this. Let's go check it out. Huh, that sounds like fun. Hell yeah, I'm in. Davis was the only one who wasn't too keen on the idea. You guys are crazy. We're gonna get in trouble, and if we get caught, we'll have to pay a huge fine. So what? We're used to it by now, and it's not like we're the ones who are gonna pay the fine. Don't be such a dork. Fine. We managed to climb the fence and go into the train yard. From the outside, the old boxcars didn't look menacing at all, but up close, it was a different story. I had heard stories of human trafficking operations where their main method of transportation was boxcars. These were the old kind of boxcars, dating back to the 1930s, maybe even older. No telling how long they had been sitting here collecting rust. We wandered around for a while, but suddenly heard multiple footsteps from somewhere nearby. Shh! Did you guys just hear that? Yeah, I think there's someone else out here with us. My heart was pounding. It wasn't because I thought there was a crazy person out there with us. I initially thought it might have been security guards or police. We should get the hell out of here right now. I told you guys this wasn't a good idea. We all agreed and began walking back toward the fence. But we stopped as we spotted 3 men standing outside one of the boxcars. One of them said something to the other in what sounded like an Arabic language. One of them then revealed a large knife from his jacket and began running at us. Shit! Run! We all began to sprint back toward the fence. While I was running, I was hit in the back with multiple rocks. These men didn't want us to escape. It was as if they were trying to protect something. Unfortunately, we did not manage to get away. There was no way we could reach the fence in time, so we tried to find another way out, but soon came to a dead end. We were then surrounded by the assailants. We were preparing ourselves to fight them off, but all 3 of them had knives out. By pure luck, we heard someone yelling, "Drop your weapons and put your hands in the air." Several policemen emerged from the shadows, pointing guns at all of us. They didn't know who were the victims and who were the bad guys. They put us all in cuffs and took us into custody. We had to stay at the police station until our parents came back the next day. The police let us go without a fine, since it was our first offense, but our parents were furious at us, and as a punishment, they sent us off to the Dominican Republic to go live with our grandparents from my father's side. We had to work as school janitors for a year, plus did most of the chores around the house for our grandparents. The punishment was harsh, but we were all glad to be alive. We now live in Miami and have jobs as construction workers. To all the rebellious kids out there, I won't judge you for being troublemakers, but at the very least, try not to be dumb like we were that night, and don't put yourselves in harm's way. Looking back, I have a feeling that those 3 men were only the tip of the iceberg. The entire time we were in that train yard, I had the feeling that something horrible was taking place there, just out of sight. This happened back in 2017. For the sake of the story, I'll refer to myself as Nate. For context, I live in Georgetown, Guyana. It's an English-speaking country in South America, right next to Brazil. I'm 35 years old, but at the time I was 28, and I was renting a 3-bedroom house in an average but safe neighborhood. On the night of November 5th, my girlfriend, who I will call Becca, came to visit me. We didn't live together at the time. After Becca's visit, she left at around 11 p.m. Since it was late, I walked her back to her car. After we said our goodbyes, I went back inside and into my upstairs bedroom, shortly after I began dozing off. But I became wide awake when I heard one of my glass cups smashing on the kitchen floor downstairs. I went into full panic mode, not knowing exactly what to do. My bedroom did not have a lock on it, so I crept to the stairwell and peeked into the kitchen downstairs. I saw 2 men in my house walking around. One of them had a large knife in his hands. I quickly, but quietly, walked into the bathroom and locked myself inside. I wanted to call the police, but I was afraid to make any noise. The police in Guyana don't have the best response time either. I then heard the 2 men walking upstairs, into the hallway, and right up to the bathroom door. They began pounding on it. The door shook violently on its hinges. I thought I was going to die. One of them shouted, "Open the fucking door. We know you're in there." Suddenly I heard gunshots right outside the bathroom door, followed by someone collapsing. Then another voice said, "No, please. It was all his idea. Please, don't shoot. No!" I then heard one more gunshot. Then a familiar voice said, "Come out, it's me." I came out of the bathroom to see my girlfriend with a pistol in her hands. I had mixed feelings. I was grateful that she had saved my life, but here in Guyana, you could be arrested for killing an intruder. However, when the police showed up a short time later, the officers didn't seem to really care at all. An ambulance came by and picked up the bodies, and just like that, it was all over. Becca later explained to me how she saw the intruders breaking into my house in her rearview mirror, so she decided to turn around and intervene. I will forever be grateful to Becca for saving my life that night. This happened to me 2 years ago. It was my first month on the job, and I worked night security at a pretty interesting place. For the record, I still work there, and I have many more strange stories to possibly tell in the future. I am a 38-year-old male. I've worked security jobs for most of my life. I used to be in event security for various well-known concert venues. In other words, I don't scare easily, and I hardly ever go into a panic mode when a crisis comes up. The place I currently work at is a resort-style apartment complex. To give you a layout of this place, there are 3 floors of apartments with 50 units on each floor. This place takes up one city block with a golf course in back, indoor swimming pools, hot tubs, and a small movie theater. You name it, this place has it. Most of the residents here are retired doctors, lawyers, and otherwise rich. Some just use their apartments in the summer and leave as soon as the snow falls. It's located in a well-known tourist town in the United States. The building itself has 12 exits on the first floor. The doors are locked at 11 p.m. You can still exit, but you can't get back in unless you go to the front of the building and ask to be buzzed in, or pick up a box phone next to whatever exit you're at. It will ring to a company cell phone, which I'll answer and can let you in. The first lobby is set up much like a hotel, with sliding glass doors which I lock when I begin my shift. In the middle of the building on the first floor are two big slider doors which I also lock. They lead to the private parking lot. The parking lot itself has an automatic gate, and you have to have a code to get in. It was midsummer, and while it's never really hot here, on that night was the exception. It was still very warm after the sun had set. I came in 10 minutes to 11 to start my shift. We have a routine to hand off the keys, event log, and phone to the next person on duty. Despite its size, I am the only security guard here at night. My coworker informed me the side iron gates that led into the parking lot were open on one side because they were stuck. This is nothing new. They've been jammed before in the past. She told me that the repair people would be there tomorrow to fix it, and just to do some extra patrolling around that area. This place sits across the road from a public park, and while it's a decent area, the park tends to attract druggies and homeless people at night, who sometimes like to wander around the property or cause trouble. My night started out uneventful. As a security guard in this place, we only have pepper spray, a large flashlight, keys, and a company cell phone to call 911 if needed. We were told not to confront anyone unless it was absolutely necessary. We were simply eyes and ears, and to call the police if something comes up. Of course, you can defend yourself if you need to, but in all cases, if you're in danger, calling the police was the company policy. Basically, I walk around the grounds and floors, keeping an eye out on anything suspicious, watching the cameras in the security office, which was in the lobby, and otherwise just generally stay alert. If a tenant calls for maintenance requests, I would take the information down on the computer, or if someone called with a security issue, I would attend to it. Pretty easy job, I thought. I locked the doors to the parking lot and the lobby doors. I did a sweep of all 3 floors and found myself back at the desk. It was really quiet, and it rolled around to 3 a.m. I had just sat down to eat my lunch when the company's cell phone rang. The caller ID let me know that it was from one of the outside phone boxes. I picked it up and said, "Thanks for calling. This is Security Officer James. How can I help you?" All I heard was someone breathing. I glanced over at the cameras, and all I could see was the shadow of a figure standing just out of reach from the door in view of the camera. Again, I asked, "Hello? Can I help you?" The breathing got louder, followed by a laugh. Then silence. It was one of those laughs you hear in a movie when the lunatic is about to do something terrible. I got up from my chair and started to walk out of the office and to the door he was at, when the phone rang again. This time it was from call box number 2, which was further down. I quickly looked at the camera and saw this large figure in a hooded jacket. I knew this was strange as it was still very warm outside. He was holding a black bag in his hand and had his back to the camera. "I'm coming for you, and you're gonna die," a raspy voice said. He hung up before I had a chance to say anything. Then the phone rang again. This time I picked up, and before he could speak, I told him that the cops were on their way and to leave the property now, as he was on camera. He tried the doors and they were both locked. This time he was at yet another call box. This guy had to be running at top speed to make it to one call box to another.
I can see you. Are you ready to die? Cops won't make it here in time.
I spoke loud and pretended like I was talking to another security officer and asked to send another 3 guards to the location and that the police have been dispatched. The guy slammed the phone down against the call box receiver, and I watched him on camera take off into the darkness toward the park area. I figured that scared him off. I was going to call the police, but honestly, given the location of this place, it would have taken them at least 15 minutes to get there. I figured this guy was just some tweaker from the park. I scanned the cameras and walked to the back lot, just to be sure that there was no one there. I had my pepper spray in my hands, just in case. I checked, and there was nothing. I returned to my desk and wrote down what happened in the incident log. And I had finished my lunch, and I was just about to go do my rounds when the phone rang again. This time it was from an unknown number. I thought it would be a resident calling for a repair issue or something. I picked it up and said my normal line.
Where are the cops? I don't see them. But I see you.
Fuck, it was that guy again. I scanned the cameras and I didn't see anything. I went to the front door and looked outside. There was nothing but darkness, with a couple of floodlights on.
I know that you're alone, and you're going to die soon.
I basically told him to fuck off and hung up. I then called the non-emergency number and let them know what was going on. The dispatcher said that they would send somebody out to check out the area and make contact with me. The next thing I heard is a loud thud against the glass windows to the day manager's office, which sits directly across from the security room. I ran to the door and unlock it. I pull up the shades and shine my flashlight through the window into the darkness. I catch the face of this hooded man. He looked to be about 40, with long stringy hair and these crazed eyes. He looked right at me and grinned before slamming his head into the window to try and break it. I started yelling at him, telling him that the cops were coming and to get the fuck out of here. That's when he pulled the biggest damn butcher knife I've ever seen and made a slicing motion across his throat. This guy was insane and probably on drugs, and he continued slamming his body against the glass, trying to break it. He headbutted the window several times, but all he managed to do was bust his head open, so the window now had blood all over it. I backed out of the office and locked the door. I then decided to wait for the cops. This guy was out of his mind, and my pepper spray likely wouldn't have stopped him. The last thing that I wanted to do that night was manhandle a bloodied, crazy person. He then ran to the nearest side door and took the call box phone off the hook. He then ran to each of the call boxes and removed all the phones, which caused my company cell phone to ring and jam up the line. This guy had to be on meth or something, because he ran as fast as I could imagine. I watched the cameras, and to my horror, I noticed the sliding door to the garage was open. This was different from the broken gate that I mentioned earlier. From time to time, residents would accidentally leave this door open, but this was the last thing I needed with this nut job running around. I sprinted across the building and took a shortcut through some banquet rooms to make it to the garage. As I was doing so, I saw that the crazy man was running up the garage pathway. I slid that door down as fast as I could and locked it before he got to the entryway. He then slammed his body against it, over and over, but the door did not move. I locked the second set of doors in case he got through, so it would at least slow him down. I reached for my pepper spray, and I yelled that the cops were here, thinking that maybe he would just leave. He started to laugh and howl. He then held his knife up again, before running back into the darkness. I called the cops again on my personal phone, and told them that the man had a knife. The dispatcher told me that the cops would be there shortly. I made my way to the front again, and locked myself in the security office. At least, this place had no windows, and I could watch on camera. I heard another loud thud, and realized he was now at the front lobby doors, trying to get in. I was hoping the cops would roll up at any minute, but they didn't. And while it probably didn't take them that long, in that moment, it felt like forever. This guy was standing at the lobby doors, with a knife in his hand. He faced the camera, and at this point his hood had fallen back. He had a bald spot, with long crazy hair on the sides. His eyes were enormous, and I will never forget that grin on his face as he mouthed to the camera, "Die, die, die," while making stabbing motions with that knife, blood running across his face from where he slammed his head into the glass. He then disappeared into the darkness. About 5 minutes later is when the cops showed up. They sent one officer. He drove through the area first and shined his spotlight around. He then returned to tell me that he couldn't find anyone, and had driven around the entire block and back area behind the golf course. I showed him the footage and printed out a picture for him. The cop said that he would patrol the area, and to call back immediately if he came around again. It was nearly 5 a.m. when the cop left. I waited until 6 a.m. when it was daylight, and people were starting to get out and about before I walked around and hung up all the phones. This guy took all 12 of the phones off the box. When my manager came in for the morning shift at 8 a.m., I told her what happened, and she said that she would keep an eye out and have a meeting with everyone else who worked there so they could be aware. After that night, they had an extra security guard on my shift for about 2 weeks, but thankfully, the guy never returned.